Knowledge, its source and acquirement. Various have been the theories propounded as regards the primitive source of knowledge. We read in the Upanishads that Brahma, who was the first and foremost among the Devas, held the key to all knowledge, which he revealed to his disciples and which, being handed down in succession, has been bequeathed as a legacy to the subsequent age. According to the Jains, during an indefinite period of cycle of time, which comprises between 1000 and 2000 billions of oceans of years, are born some extraordinary, great, perfected beings, whom they call jinas, and through them the door to knowledge is now and then opened to human society. Likewise, Buddhism believes in and expects at regular intervals the appearance of the Buddhas, that is, persons possessed of infinite universal wisdom. The same is the reason also of the introduction of incarnations of God by the Pauranika Hindus, who ascribe to them, along with other missions, the special function of restoring the lost spiritual knowledge by its proper adjustment to the needs of the time. Outside India, we find the great souled Zoroaster bringing down the light of knowledge from above to the mortal world. So also did Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad, who, possessed of heavenly authority, proclaimed to fallen humanity the tidings of divine wisdom in their own unique ways. Brahma is the name of a high position among the Devas, to which every man can aspire by virtue of meritorious deeds. Only a selected few can become jinas, while others can never attain to jinahood. But they can only go so far as to gain the state of mukti. The state of being a Buddha is open to one and all without distinction. Zoroaster, Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad are great personalities who incarnated themselves for the fulfillment of some special mission. So also did the incarnations of God mentioned by the Pauranika sages. For others to look up to that seat of these divine personages with a longing eye is madness. Adam got his knowledge through the tasting of the forbidden fruit. Noah was taught social science by the grace of Jehovah. In India, the theory is that every science has its presiding deity. Their founders are either devas or perfected beings. From the most menial arts, as that of a cobbler, to the most dignified office of the spiritual guide, everything depends on the kind of intervention of the gods or supreme beings. No knowledge is possible without a teacher. There is no way to the attainment of knowledge unless it is transmitted through an apostolic succession from disciple to disciple, unless it comes through the mercy of the Guru and direct from his mouth. Then again, the Vedantic and other philosophers of the Indian schools hold that knowledge is not to be acquired from without. It is the innate nature of the human soul and the essential birthright of every man. The human soul is the repository of infinite wisdom. What external agency can illuminate it? According to some schools, this infinite wisdom remains always the same and is never lost. And man is not ordinarily conscious of this because a veil, so to speak, has fallen over it on account of his evil deeds. But as soon as the veil is removed, it reveals itself. Others say that this infinite wisdom, though potentially present in a human soul, has become contracted through evil deeds and it becomes expanded again by the mercy of God gained by good deeds. We also read in our scriptures various other methods of unfolding this inborn infinite power and knowledge, such as devotion to God, performance of work without attachment, practicing the eightfold accessories of the yoga system, or constant dwelling on this knowledge, and so on. The final conclusion, however, is this that through the practice of one or more or all of these methods together, man gradually becomes conscious of his inborn real nature, and the infinite power and wisdom within, latent or veiled, becomes at last fully manifest. On the other side, the modern philosophers have analyzed the human mind as the source of infinitely possible manifestations and have come to the conclusion that when the individual mind, on the one hand, and favorable time, place, and causation on the other, can act and react upon one another, then highly developed consciousness of knowledge is sure to follow. Nay, even the unfavorableness of time and place can be successfully surmounted by the vigor and firmness of the individual. The strong individual, even if he is thrown amidst the worst conditions of place or time, overcomes them, and affirms his own strength. Not only so, all the heavy burdens heaped upon the individual, the acting agent, are being made lighter and lighter in the course of time, so that any individual, however weak he may be in the beginning, is sure to reach the goal at the end if he assiduously applies himself to gain it. Look at the uncivilized and ignorant barbarians of the other day. How, through close and studious application, they are making long strides into the domains of civilization. How, even those of the lower strata are making their way and are occupying with an irresistible force the most exalted positions in it. The sons of cannibal parents are turning out elegant and educated citizens. The descendants of the uncivilized Santals, thanks to the English government, have been nowadays meeting in successful competition are Bengali students in the Indian universities. As such, the partiality of the scientific investigators of the present day to the doctrine of hereditary transmission of qualities is being gradually diminished. There is a certain class of men whose conviction is that from time eternal there is a treasure of knowledge which contains the wisdom of everything past, present, and future. These men hold that it was their own forefathers who had the sole privilege of having the custody of this treasure. The ancient sages, the first possessors of it, bequeathed in succession this treasure and its true import to their descendants only. They are therefore the only inheritors to it. As such, let the rest of the world worship them. May we ask these men what they think should be the condition of the other peoples who have not got such forefathers? Their condition is doomed, is the general answer. The more kind hearted among them is perchance pleased to rejoin, well, let them come and serve us. As a reward for such service, they will be born in our caste in the next birth. That is the only hope we can hold out to them. Well, the moderns are making many new and original discoveries in the field of science and arts, which neither you dreamt of, nor is there any proof that your forefathers ever had knowledge of. What do you say to that? Why, certainly our forefathers knew all these things, the knowledge of which is now unfortunately lost to us. Do you want a proof? I can show you one. Look, here is the Sanskrit verse. Needless to add that the modern party, who believes in direct evidence only, never attaches any seriousness to such replies and proofs. Generally, all knowledge is divided into two classes, the apara, secular, and the para, spiritual. One pertains to perishable things, and the other to the realm of the spirit. There is no doubt a great difference between these two classes of knowledge, and the way to the attainment of the one may be entirely different from the way to the attainment of the other. Nor can it be denied that no one method can be pointed out as the sole and universal one which will serve as the key to all and every door in the domain of knowledge. But in reality, all this difference is only one of degree and not of kind. It is not that secular and spiritual knowledge are two opposite and contradictory things, but they are the same thing, the same infinite knowledge which is everywhere fully present from the lowest atom to the highest Brahman. They are the same knowledge in its different stages of gradual development. This one infinite knowledge we call secular when it is in its lower process of manifestation, and spiritual when it reaches the corresponding higher phase. All knowledge is possessed exclusively by some extraordinary great men, and those special personages take birth by the command of God, or in conformity to a higher law of nature, or in some preordained order of karma. Except through the agency of these great ones, there is no other way of attaining knowledge. If such a view be correct and certain, there seems to be no necessity for any individual to strive hard to find any new and original truth. All originality is lost to society for want of exercise and encouragement. And the worst of all is that society tries to oppose and stop any attempt in the original direction, and thus the faculty of the initiative dies out. If it is finally settled that the path of human welfare is forever chalked out by these omniscient men, society naturally fears its own destruction if the least deviation be made from the boundary line of the path, and so it tries to compel all men through rigid laws and threats of punishment to follow that path with unconditional obedience. If society succeeds in imposing such obedience to itself by confining all men within the narrow groove of these paths, then the destiny of mankind becomes no better than that of a machine. If every act in a man's life has been all previously determined, then what need is there for the culture of the faculty of thought? Where is the field for the free play of independent thought and action? In course of time, for want of proper use, all activity is given up, all originality is lost. A sort of Tamasika dreamy lifelessness hovers over the whole nation, and headlong it goes down and down. The death of such a nation is not far to seek. On the other hand, if the other extreme were true, that society prospers the most which is not guided by the injunctions of such divinely inspired souls, then civilization, wisdom, and prosperity, deserting the Chinese, Hindus, Egyptians, Babylonians, Iranians, Greeks, Romans, and other great nations of ancient and modern times, who have always followed the path laid down by their sages, would have embraced the Zulus, the Kafirs, the Hottentots, and the aboriginal tribes of the Andamans and the Australian Islands, who have led a life of guideless independence. Considering all these points, it must be admitted that though the presence of knowledge everywhere in every individual is an eternal truism, yet the path pointed out by the great ones of the earth has the glory peculiar to it, and that there is a peculiar interest attached to the transmission of knowledge through the succession of teachers and their disciples. Each of them has its place in the development of the sum total of knowledge, and we must learn to estimate them according to their respective merits. But perhaps being carried away by their overzealous and blind devotion to their masters, the successors and followers of these great ones sacrifice truth before the altar of devotion and worship to them, and misrepresent the true meaning of the purpose of those great lives by insisting on personal worship, that is, they kill the principle for the person. This is also a fact of common experience that when man himself has lost all his own strength, he naturally likes to pass his days in idle remembrance of his forefathers' greatness. The devoted heart gradually becomes the weakest in its constant attempt to resign itself in every respect to the feet of its ancestors, and at last a time comes when this weakness teaches the disabled yet proud heart to make the vain glory of its ancestors' greatness as the only support of its life. Even if it be true that your ancestors possessed all knowledge, which has in the efflux of time been lost to you, it follows that you, their descendants, must have been instrumental in this disappearance of knowledge, and now it is all the same to you whether you have it or not. To talk of having or losing this already lost knowledge serves no useful purpose at present. You will have to make new efforts, to undergo troubles over again, if you want to recover it. True, that spiritual illumination shines of itself in a pure heart, and as such, it is not something acquired from without, but to attain this purity of heart means long struggle and constant practice. It has also been found, on careful inquiry in the sphere of material knowledge, that those higher truths which have now and then been discovered by great scientific men have flashed like sudden floods of light in their mental atmosphere, which they had only to catch and formulate. But such truths never appear in the mind of an uncultured and wild savage. All these go to prove that hard tapasya, or practice of austerities in the shape of devout contemplation and constant study of a subject, is at the root of all illumination in its respective spheres. What we call extraordinary, superconscious inspiration is only the result of a higher development of ordinary consciousness, gained by long and continued effort. The difference between the ordinary and the extraordinary is merely one of degree in manifestation. Conscious efforts lead the way to superconscious illumination. Infinite perfection is in every man, though unmanifested. Every man has in him the potentiality of attaining to perfect saintliness, rishihood, or to the most exalted position of an avatara, or to the greatness of a hero in material discoveries. It is only a question of time and adequate, well guided investigation, etc., to have this perfection manifested. In a society where once such great men were born, there the possibility of their reappearance is greater. There can be no doubt that a society with the help of such wise guides advances faster than the one without it. But it is equally certain that such guides will rise up in the societies that are now without them and will lead them to equally rapid progress in the future.